Governor Abbott puts new pressure on lawmakers as he pushes to restrict bail for people accused of crimes.
There is progress, but not sufficient progress being made with discussions.
The plan calls for constitutional amendments, which has Republicans looking to win over Democrats.
Working across the aisle is good, especially when you can find common ground, but it's also necessary.
The high stakes at the Capitol as key deadlines move closer in the session. Education savings accounts signed into law, and it's already having an impact.
It imposes a burden on a public school to do work for a private school student they're actually not ever going to see.
The growing demand that has advocates worried about added strain on public schools. How do Texans feel about the job our leaders are doing? New insight into how voters view the state's big three and the president.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. Governor Greg Abbott made bail reform one of his top priorities this legislative session. He's backing two proposed constitutional amendments. One would require judges to automatically deny bail for people accused of violent crimes. The other would require undocumented immigrants who are accused of a felony to be held without bond. Those proposals cleared the Senate but have stalled in the Texas House. Now, with the end of the session just weeks away, Capitol reporter Adam Schwager shows us how the governor is taking a stronger stance to push bail reform forward.
In a joint press conference with victims of criminals who were out on bond and the author of the Senate and House bail reform efforts, Governor Greg Abbott said that bail reform should go further than what the Senate has already passed.
Judges must automatically deny bail for violent crimes like murder, rape, and human trafficking unless there is clear and convincing evidence that the defendant will appear in court and not endanger the community.
The proposed constitutional amendment, which passed the Senate, gave judges discretion to hold those criminals without bail. But now Abbott says the burden should be on the defendant to show why they're not a threat to the community, rather than the prosecution to show why they are a threat. To do this, Abbott will have to convince 12 House Democrats to join on to a proposed constitutional amendment, votes which Abbott hinted he might not have yet.
There is progress, but not sufficient progress being made with discussions.
Senate Jurisprudence Committee Chair Joan Huffman said,
"We are done negotiating. The governor has laid out perfectly what the bill is going to do."
And House Jurisprudence Chair John Smithy said the bail reform bills will get out of committee this week.
If we don't make a deal, then we're gonna go to battle.
And if Abbott's battle over bail reform isn't won by the time session ends on June 2nd, don't count out a special session.
We'll make decisions like that as they arise.
For State of Texas, I'm Adam Schwager.
For now, the fate of bail reform is in the hands of House lawmakers. One key player is the Texas House Speaker, Dustin Burrows. Our reporting partners in Lubbock spoke with Burrows this week for their Talking Points program. He gave his take on the outlook for bail reform in the House.
You know, when you're talking about bail reform, it requires a change to the Texas Constitution, which means you have to have 2/3 of the Texas House. It cannot be a partisan vote. So if you do not know how to work across the aisle on things like this or other things in general, you can't get it done. So we're going to continue to work this session and make sure that violent criminals don't get out to do more violent crimes. I'm very hopeful that we can find some common ground and work towards bringing a solution for all Texans.
So what do Texas voters think? A new poll from the Texas Politics Project at the University of Texas is giving us some insight. The poll asked voters how important it is for the legislature to limit the ability of judges to release people accused of serious crimes on bail. More than half said it was either very or extremely important. Just 5% said it was not important at all. The poll also looked at approval ratings for key state leaders. Texas voters appear split over Governor Abbott's leadership. 44% approve of the job he's doing, 43% disapprove. The opinions fell largely along party lines. The poll showed a similar partisan divide when it comes to opinions about Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. 36% of voters polled approved his job performance, and 36% disapproved. 19% were neutral. The rest of the people polled said they don't know about Patrick. Approval ratings for Speaker Dustin Burrows are below Abbott's and Patrick's numbers, but a large number of Texans just don't know anything about him. The poll found 18% of voters approve of Burrows' job performance, while 28% said they disapprove. The poll found 27% were neutral on the speaker, which is the same percentage of those who said they did not know about Burrows. The Texas Politics Project also asked how Texans feel about President Trump in his second term. The results show Texans are split over his performance overall. 47% approve, which is down 5 points from February. 46% either somewhat or strongly disapprove. That's an 8% jump since a February poll. The poll also asked about specific aspects of Trump's job performance. More than half of Texas voters approve of how the president has handled immigration and border security. Just under 40% of those polled disapprove. When it comes to inflation and prices, just over a third of Texans approve of how President Trump is handling things, and nearly half disapprove. We spoke with Texas Politics Project Director James Henson about the results.
He's doing well on one signature issue of his, immigration and the border, but not as well on something that in his last term was his signature issue, which was, I'm a good businessman, I can manage the economy. A little less in evidence now.
Despite the dip in approval over inflation and prices, the poll found Texas Republicans remain highly supportive of Trump's policies. The new law to create education savings accounts is already having an impact. We look at the growing demand from parents that's raising worries about added strain on public schools. More attention comes from one form of green energy that's finding strong red state support, and it could help strengthen the Texas power grid. A Texas mom and her daughter fight to take down explicit deepfake images shared on social media. How they teamed up with a senator on a new law to help victims. A school finance bill that would inject $7.7 billion into Texas public schools is now stalled in the Senate. It comes amid worries over school closures and districts falling into deeper shortfalls. But there's a new concern: districts facing increased requests from parents for special education evaluations in hopes of getting priority for school choice funds. Investigator Kelly Wiley learned why education advocates say additional funding is needed now more than ever.
After years of promising a program that would allow taxpayer dollars to go to private schools, Governor Greg Abbott officially signed education savings accounts into law.
We deliver on that promise.
Likely beginning in the 2026-27 school year, the state will provide thousands of students about $10,000 a year to put towards private school education and up to $30,000 a year for students with disabilities. Cassandra Holsey is the Region 13 delegate for the Texas Council of Administrators of Special Education and the Hutto Independent School District Special Education Director. She says her district and several others in Central Texas have already received evaluation requests from parents seeking the higher ESA amounts.
In my district, we have already received several requests specifically from parents who currently private school or homeschool their children.
Austin ISD officials also said this year they saw an uptick in the requests from private and homeschool families, although they don't know if they're seeking an ESA. Under the Education Savings Account program, students would need a full and individual initial evaluation and an individualized education plan to qualify for the higher ESA amount offered to students with disabilities. Senator Brandon Creighton is the chair of the Senate Education Committee and the author of the state's new school choice law.
Those evaluations, they're required by federal law, and there's nothing that changes that in this bill. They'll continue to be available.
Federal and state law does already require school districts to evaluate any student suspected of having a disability within 45 school days of receiving parental consent, including children who were not enrolled in the public school. For months, advocates have been calling attention to differences between the process under current law and the process for evaluations laid out in Senate Bill 2 for the new ESA program. Districts can already refuse an evaluation if they don't suspect the student has a disability.
With this bill, those thresholds appear to not exist anymore, which means that any evaluation request that the schools receive, we would be obligated to conduct.
Also under current law, school districts have several exceptions that allow an extension to the 45 school day deadline to complete a student evaluation. T-Case and Disability Rights Texas point out, under SB 2, some of those extensions are not explicitly laid out. Disability Rights Texas senior policy analyst Steve Alamon says the discrepancies could lead to preferential treatment for private school students.
It imposes a burden on a public school to do work for a private school student they're actually not ever going to see, they're not ever going to get reimbursed for, over and above the public school students who are already there, needing services, already on wait list.
Kelly Wiley, State of Texas.
There is less than a month left in the legislative session. Representative Gene Wu, who leads the Texas House Democratic Caucus, told us he's worried about the school funding bill and how it might not pass at all.
Like Texans should be screaming about is like, hey, you've passed your voucher scams. Where's our school? Where's our public school funding? The public should be in a rage about this.
While education savings accounts and teacher pay were on the priority list this legislative session, school funding was not. An underground resource is getting more attention as Texas looks for more ways to produce power. Why debates over wind and solar could boost a different type of green energy.
We are seeing a growing problem of non-consensual intimate images, kids being targeted, women being targeted.
A Texas senator leads the way on a new law to punish people who produce deepfake pornographic images, how it's giving victims new power to take those images down. As politicians in D.C. and Texas squabble over solar and wind power, an underground resource is getting renewed attention. As investigator Matt Grant learned, at least one form of green energy is finding strong red state support, something that could help strengthen Texas' power grid.
For Andrea and Philip Melendrez, buying a home this year wasn't the only first.
I actually had no idea what it was. It was advertised and I had to go on and Google it.
It is geothermal, a process that harnesses heat from below ground, in this case 350 feet.
It cools down a lot quicker.
Cooling and heating their home and hundreds of others at Whisper Valley, a unique first-of-its-kind community near East Austin, where geothermal energy on a smaller scale comes through heat pumps like this, connected to pipes underground.
They save money, they have a more comfortable home that they're living in, less noise pollution.
While large-scale geothermal accounts for less than 1% of the country's energy supply, there's a groundswell of support.
Geothermal energy is clean, renewable, and available independent of the weather conditions.
Uniting Democrats, Republicans, environmentalists.
Geothermal is a really important resource. It could be very important to the state.
The Texas oil and gas industry.
We will drill, baby, drill.
And the Trump administration.
I love that you highlight geothermal. Just tremendous potential energy source.
Since the president declared a national energy emergency in January, calling insufficient energy production and generation an extraordinary threat to the economy and national security, the White House has highlighted geothermal in 2 executive orders and singled it out on Earth Day as a way the country can lead in both energy production and environmental innovation.
What do you think the future of geothermal energy is in Texas?
Oh, it's bright, or if you'll pardon the pun, it's hot.
Back in Austin, Drew Nelson with the nonprofit Project Innerspace is pushing to expand what experts call a low-carbon, climate-friendly resource.
Geothermal energy taps into Earth's natural heat by drilling deep into underground reservoirs.
With ERCOT saying energy demand is expected to double in Texas in about 5 years, one report by the Rhodium Group, an independent research provider specializing in global climate change and energy systems, found geothermal can play a major role in meeting growing electricity demand from AI data centers. And because the extraction process involves the same drilling techniques used in oil and gas, geothermal supporters say they're tapping into Texas's expertise.
You look at all of the major geothermal startups, and they have former oil and gas people that are playing key roles in those companies because they have the know-how, they have the technology,
companies like Houston-based Sage Geosystems. In February, the Railroad Commission gave it the first permit for a deep geothermal well to generate electricity for the San Miguel Electric Cooperative south of San Antonio. Recently, the company was awarded nearly $2 million in federal grants to test if a power plant using new fracking technology to extract thermal energy miles below the Earth's surface can power an Air Force base.
It's the heat beneath our feet, it's the magma that powers the core of the Earth, and so it's always there.
Jade Gillespie with the Texas Geothermal Energy Alliance says new technology is making it easier to extract in more places. She wants the state to adopt an all-of-the-above and below approach to energy, whether it's a future large-scale power production or simply adjusting your thermostat. The potential is already hitting close to home.
Honestly, I couldn't recommend it more.
I feel like it's been a game changer.
Lawmakers have also considered a proposal this legislative session to create a council within the Texas Railroad Commission tasked with studying geothermal energy development. That idea includes tax breaks for new projects and recommendations for the oversight and regulation of production.
Matt Grant, State of Texas.
Austin Energy says it's building a first-of-its-kind geothermal project near Nacogdoches that will produce 5 megawatts of carbon-free electricity, enough to power over 1,000 homes during times of peak energy usage. Austin Energy calls geothermal a valuable tool in its effort to strengthen Texas's grid and keep costs down. Read what the Texas Oil and Gas Association has to say about this potential energy source online now in this story on our website. Just click on the Texas Energy Crossroads link in this week's State of Texas story. An update now to our investigation into child support evaders. A bill aimed at helping Texas families dealing with child support challenges is heading to the governor. The Texas House passed the legislation which would modernize administrative processes. SB 1403 will allow the Office of the Attorney General to speed up procedures by using email to reduce delays in delivering child support. The legislation also allows the AG to stop enforcement measures for a person in jail for an act of family violence committed against the child, and will require the agency to provide brochures at courthouses and publish online relevant information for families. The legislation comes after our investigation revealed concerns from parents owed billions of dollars in child support and the challenges they face tracking down delinquent parents. You can explore our investigation into child support evaders online now. We have a link in this week's State of Texas story on our website. It can be a nightmare for a parent. Intimate images of your child circulating on social media.
I'm helpless. I can't help my child.
But a Texas mom and her daughter found a way to fight back. How they teamed up with a senator to push through a new law to help victims. A new law is on its way to the president's desk to create penalties for people who produce deepfake pornographic images. It also gives victims new power to help take those images down. The legislation comes at a critical time with studies showing there's been an increase in people using AI to create explicit images targeting women and teenagers. Capitol reporter Dylan McKim spoke to the Texas family who advocated for this law.
There is technology that allows a user to take an innocent image, run it through an app on their phone to generate a pornographic image. They're called deepfakes, and with social media, they can be shared and spread to an unknown amount of people. For one family in Aledo, Texas, these deepfakes became a real problem.
Coming to our room crying, going, "Mom, you won't believe what's happening."
Anna McAdams' 14-year-old daughter, Elliston, was just a few months into high school when her life changed. Another student took pictures from her Instagram to create fake nude images of her and 8 other female students. He was sending them around on social media.
I'm helpless. I can't help my child.
As she tried to get the school involved to stop the spread of these images, she saw the changes in her daughter.
Really watched her kind of go into a shell, kind of go inside herself. She got off of social media completely.
They started spreading their story and eventually got the attention of Senator Ted Cruz, who wrote the Take It Down Act. It creates criminal charges for anyone producing and sharing non-consensual intimate images. But more importantly, it helps victims get those images taken down. McAdams said it was very difficult difficult for her to get Snapchat to help get the images of her daughter taken off.
We would go on there and we just request, please take these down, leave my email, my phone number, never heard back from them.
The new law gives tech companies 48 hours to take down one of these images after someone reports it. The Federal Trade Commission has authority to punish any company that does not comply.
Any victim will have a federal statutory right to ensure that content gets taken down.
McAdams and her daughter are currently working on a curriculum to educate schools and parents about how to approach these situations in the future.
This Take It Down Act is there, and we can use it. Law enforcement can use it.
Dylan McKim, State of Texas.
Dylan spoke one-on-one with Senator Cruz. He gave us the backstory of how he discovered just how difficult it can be to get explicit deepfakes removed.
When I introduced the bill, Elliston and her mom, Anna, both came to D.C., and I was meeting with them in my office. And I asked, I said, hey, what happened to the pictures? Whatever happened with them? And her mother expressed enormous frustration. She said, you know, it's been 9 months since this happened to my daughter. She said, I've repeatedly called and emailed Snapchat, and I've tried over and over again. They won't do anything. I just get a stonewall. I turned to my team and I said, I want you to get the CEO of Snapchat on the phone in the next 2 hours. I want this garbage down today. They pulled the pictures down within 2 hours. It shouldn't take a sitting U.S. senator making a phone call to get that content down. And now, as soon as the president signs the Take It Down Act into law, any victim will have a federal statutory right to ensure that content gets taken down.
Lawmakers at the Texas state capitol are also working to fight deepfake images. The Texas House unanimously passed legislation last week that would require the same 48-hour time limit for social media companies to take down inappropriate images when they receive a complaint. That bill now moves to the Senate. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.